Hello everyone, welcome to this video explaining why Steins is overrated. I by no means think it is a bad anime, I just don't think it's anywhere near deserving of a top 5 on my anime list for the quality it has. And this video is going to be analyzing it using Goethe's 3 questions. So the first question is, what was the artist trying to do? As far as the story goes, the artist was trying to create a compelling time travel anime with differing characters, with unique personalities, and maybe keep the viewer interested. This is something I brought up in my original recording, but I didn't say for some reason, and I forgot to talk about it in my retake, but Steins is also trying to be a good harem series, you know. The visual novel, at least, has many different endings, and you're allowed to be with multiple different girls, but in the anime, you're only given one option, basically, and yeah. That's something the artist was trying to do in the visual novel, but I guess it's not applicable to the anime. And one other thing is that the artist wanted to transfer Steins Gate, the very popular visual novel, to an anime with the anime adaptation Steins Gate. And other obvious things are that the artist wanted it to have high animation quality, good sound design, including music. And yeah, that's pretty much what the artist was trying to do in Steins Gate. As far as how well it was done, starting off with the obvious stuff like video quality or animation quality, it's quite good, especially for the year that it released. There are some sound design problems in earlier episodes, like you can hear the noise floor of the microphone when characters start speaking, but I believe this was addressed in later episodes. And to get into how well the story was done, I don't find the foreshadowing to be particularly good. Yeah, there are some things here and there, but the foreshadowing is really not on a high enough level to be considered great foreshadowing. The reading Steiner ability is really dumb, how it just comes from him getting a fever, and you can argue that other people have the same ability too because they can remember stuff from their past world lines, but not nearly with the accuracy that Okabe can. There's also immersion-breaking things like Mayushi supposedly being innocent but is willing to be bad faith to help her friends or something, like when she said Suzuha's father was kidnapped to other people to try to find him. This was really bad faith, and I don't know exactly why this is. Maybe it's because the voice actor leads on the viewer this way, but I never really thought of Mayushi as this bad faith character. She's kind of like supposed to be the nice person, but they just ruined the immersion in this scene especially, so I don't think that was well done at all. And the show often sets up something as purposely unpredictable because the writing is so bad that it seems not possible. For example, the Daru hacking scene. This guy is seemingly pervy for no reason, fat for no reason, a super hacker for no reason, doesn't really make any sense. Why? Yeah, pretty much a common theme is that the characters are all cardboard cutouts in the series without any true depth. And I don't know, I feel like they should have made it more of an anime than just kind of copy and paste from a visual novel. For example, the settings are so bland. We have a playground that they just constantly go to all the time randomly as some chosen setting, and I think it would have worked really well in a visual novel, but it's just not a compatible medium for a direct transfer. They should have made it more closer to an anime, but at the same time it would have deviated further from the artistic intent of Steins Gate, the visual novel. And no matter how you try to approach this, if you want to experience the artistic intent, you have to play the game, so they might as well have just done a better job of making this an anime rather than just copy and pasted from a visual novel. Another thing is that there is not really any why for the time travel. There are some of the dumbest conditions ever, like you have to have a CRT TV downstairs on for the time leap, or what was it, the D-mail? I forgot what it was exactly, but the CRT TV has to be on for a certain time travel method to work, and I don't really understand why this was the case. You know, there's just too much how and not enough why in the series. They should have done actual explanations for things instead of just telling the viewers to, or expecting the viewers to accept whatever they tell them. Like, there are a lot of tropes in Steins Gate in terms of time travel. Like, they brought up the time paradox trope where you can't meet your former self or your other self in the same world because there will be a time paradox, and it would have been interesting at least if they explained some of the theory behind it, or at least attempted to, because they just tell you these things and you're expected to believe it. Like, why does meeting your past self result in a time paradox is not explained well enough in this series. Or it's not even explained at all, really. It's just not adequate, I think, in terms of higher level viewing when you're trying to get into how well something was done. And I don't think the Daru hacking scene really made any sense. The entire quote-unquote CERN let them in thing was weak writing, especially because FB was below them the whole time, and if you look at the character interactions between FB and the rest of the characters early on, there was really not sufficient foreshadowing to indicate that this is the bad guy or something, you know? And you can make an argument that this draws a parallel to Shining Finger or Moeka, I think that's how you pronounce it, who is super obvious of a villain immediately from the beginning, and it's just annoying when the other characters are not able to figure it out when you as the viewer are just like, she is so obviously the villain. We have characters that are supposed to be geniuses and they can't even figure out something this simple, which is just ridiculous. There are so many scenes where lab members just leak secrets to those outside and then Okabe goes, oh, you shouldn't have said that. Tropey encounters like this are just so uninteresting. It just is annoying to the viewer because they know the truth and then the characters are oblivious for some reason. It's just really not well done at all. CERN is bad for some reason. It's not really explained why they decided to become the most evil organization ever. You just have to accept it. And, you know, it's not really good enough writing when there aren't clear motives for why people do things. You can't just give a how and not explain a why and think you have made a masterpiece. And it doesn't make sense how the CRT TV being downstairs or anything could have anything to do with FB because it's not like he's a scientist or something. Characters just randomly appear in the strangest settings which would work in a visual novel. You can tell the writing is not of the highest level in a certain direction because the visual novel considers many outcomes. I think a lot of the allure in the Steins Gate visual novels has to do with the choice of the player to decide what exactly they're going to do in the encounters. I really just don't think, as an anime, Steins Gate is as good as it could have been, because it's just better as a visual novel, or better suited to be a visual novel at least. And you know, as far as Shining Fingers or FB's reason is for basically killing Mayuri and attempting to capture the other lab members, it was claimed that they learned something they shouldn't have. Meanwhile, they are the ones who let them into CERN's database. And like I said, FB was there the whole time, so it removes a lot of the impact of the whole letting them in hacking stuff when literally one of the bad guys from CERN is right there the whole time and can basically eavesdrop on any conversation at any time and knows everything that's happening. And to give credit where it's due, I think Mr. Braun was the one who was sending those text messages to Okabe with the doll with its head cut off, something like that. But yeah, I think that was at least pretty good foreshadowing because you're wondering who it is and it never really explicitly tells you, but at least you can figure it out pretty much later on. And at the same time, there's no 100% confirming that it actually was Mr. Braun who sent those messages, at least in the anime. I don't know if this was explored further in the visual novel. And there was this corny thing about Fate where Mayuri had to die, and preventing Mayuri from dying resulted in Kurisu dying. And this is probably the biggest problem with the anime. The best moments in this series honestly came from those interactions with Kurisu and Okabe, because you really feel that this show has consequences. You know, there are actual repercussions for the things you do, and time is left best untouched or something. Maybe that would have been like some good message, but instead, when they return to the beta world line, Suzuha is there with some completely broken time machine, which literally just destroys the show. Now, all of a sudden, she can jump both backwards and forwards, and they're able to get to the Steins Gate world line where both Kurisu and Mayuri are saved. The show would have had a bigger impact probably if at least one of them died, and yeah, just having no consequences kind of defeats the entire point of Fate, really. Like, what did I even watch this for if both of them can just survive in the end, everyone lives happily ever after in a show that's kind of about fate, you know? And like, the entire time, it was so obvious what Moeka or Shining Finger was going to send her past self. Like, she was literally obsessing over the IBN 5100 the entire time. Why would she send a message to stop herself from getting a new phone? It's just, you know, Okabe didn't even want her as a lab member. She just broke her way in, kind of, or just forced her way in. why she was even allowed to send a text message to herself is like completely insane, really. Just from a character analysis perspective, it doesn't make any sense. It took them like how many episodes? 20 episodes to even realize what message she actually sent. It was just so obvious to the viewer. And I don't know if her being super obvious has any parallels to Mr. Braun not being as obvious, because his foreshadowing was actually done relatively well compared to Moeka's. Like, I have to give it to the Steins Gate creators on that. I was a fan of Mr. Braun's reveal, at least, and his foreshadowing. Even though it wasn't like the greatest foreshadowing, it was far better than the other stuff that happened in the series, at least. Mr. Braun's location was just too convenient. Why did he, the guy who works for Sir and FB, have to be at this place where they invent a time traveling machine? It really doesn't make any sense how there's just these plot conveniences in this series. And regarding Suzuha's broken time traveling machine in the Beta World line, where it can go both backwards and forwards, why couldn't this have just been a thing in the Alpha World line? Because it doesn't make any sense why they couldn't have just jumped from Alpha to Steins Gate. You wouldn't have had to undo the D-mails that Rukaku, or whatever his name, that trans guy or something, had to go back to being a guy. He could have just stayed a girl, you know. It's not clear at all why the time machine just couldn't have gone both backwards and forwards in the Alpha World line, but it could in the Beta World line. It's just so much of a plot convenience and so overpowered in the Beta World line, and yeah, really just no consequences at all. And you know, so many of the character interactions are just so obvious. Like, it's so obvious that Okabe is going to be the one who stabs Kurisu, and that Shining Finger is going to bite Okabe's lip. And one of the things about the show is that it starts off okay, but then the midsection is super boring and slow. But the ending, the last few episodes in this series are incredibly hype. Like, seriously, some of the most hyped episodes in anime. But the thing is, like, people watch these episodes and they forget all of the bad moments just because these hype moments, you know, are so emotional. And one of the things about a literary analysis like Goethe's 3 questions is that whether or not you enjoyed something is not relevant. And for the final question, was it worth doing? I would definitely say yes, Steins Gate was worth doing as a visual novel at least, and even as an anime, I would give a 50-50. I don't really see that many negatives for making Steins Gate as an anime, but I think it discourages people from possibly having a better experience with the visual novel. So yeah, that is why I think Steins Gate is overrated. I definitely think it's quite good, pretty good, but it's nowhere near top 5 anime like myanimelist indicates. I'd like to give a shout out to Mild Bill, Christopher Yu, the ROFL Reaper, Tripped, Fofo, Castello 4141, Straight Up Bemchech, Ninja Coma 3, Hunter Bungay, Vsauce 4, Wadieger, and Snivry.